You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to Currently, where we talk all things Kansas City Current and NWSL. It's me, the man, Daniel Kooser, here with his buddy, Christopher Wright. Chris, Happy New Year's, man. What's going on?
It's great, man. I went to bed at probably like 11:40, so I didn't even make it to New Year's.
Well, I didn't make it either. No, we're not supposed to make it. When you hit 30s, you're not supposed to make it. What am I saying? We're going to be 40 soon, so let's calm down.
I tried. I gave it a valiant effort. Just didn't happen.
You actually tried. That's good for you. Yeah. I don't even remember what I was doing. Probably video games or something. I don't know. I've been playing that Call of Duty, man. I have been in the game. I've been deployed for a little bit on the campaign mode. I've been at war, so it's been a whole thing.
We need to link up and play co-op. We need to do it sometime.
Sounds tough. I don't want you to make fun of me. So
okay. I probably would.
I'll be like, I'm Oscar Mike. I feel like that's what people say. That means you're on the move. Oh. In case you didn't know. Hey, man, you eat your black-eyed peas, though, for New Year's? You're supposed to do that for good luck.
What?
Oh, are you kidding me? You're supposed to eat black-eyed peas on New Year's Day, and you'll have a year full of luck.
Is that a thing? I feel like you're making it up.
Well, that's why you're very unlucky. I eat my black-eyed peas, and I win things.
That's also very true.
I didn't eat them this year, though, so I'm doomed. But, yeah, I've been doing it for years, and just, slipped my mind. It's a thing. Probably a Southern thing.
I've never heard of it in my life.
That's all right. Kansans, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Hey, I feel we got special guests joining us today, man. You were nice enough to set that up. Chris Henderson, NWSL Draft Wizard. Pretty excited to speak with him in a few. So I think that KC Current news, man. What's going on the KC Current front? Anything? You're shaking your head. There's nothing.
Yep. Nothing from last week.
Okay.
Just a lot of it is, will we keep all of our 8 picks, or, will we try to make them or trade for other picks? I mean, there's a lot of things the Current can do, but as of this moment, on Wednesday, as of the recording, nothing has happened. So
the draft is a week away, right? It's a week from today.
Yep. It's the 12th.
So I think that, are we supposed to have a draft party with like queso and stuff? Are we supposed to celebrate it like most people do for drafts?
We absolutely should. I mean, This is a big day. It's a big day. We absolutely should celebrate.
I do like some snacks. Hey, I asked
understatement of the year, but go ahead.
I'm trying to be good, man. You do resolutions or anything?
I do not.
Yeah,
I do
really
not
care about all that hubbub, huh?
It's
beneath you.
If it's important enough, there shouldn't be a date to start. But hey, sometimes it's a little kick that people need. So
this just in: straight white man hates your resolutions.
I say that, but I told myself I need to learn Spanish, or at least build a Spanish foundation. So
well, you are dating someone who very much has that as like almost their first language, for God's sakes.
It is her first language.
It is. Holy shit.
Yep. So yeah, I really should learn that, after
you would
9
think
years.
So.
After 9 years, you'd think I would learn it, but
she talks a lot of shit behind your back. I pick up some stuff here and there.
I don't blame her.
I keep hearing her say punto or something. I don't know what that means. It's not appropriate.
Well, we all remember the sporting game years ago, right?
Oh yeah, the sporting game. She talked shit to a Hispanic player on FC Dallas or something, and
yeah,
she said some mean shit in Spanish to this man taking a corner kick, and he turns around and acknowledged her.
Yeah. To be fair, we don't know what she said.
No, she told us it wasn't great. There maybe a C word in there or two. I don't know. It wasn't great.
That sounds accurate.
sounds like it's in her wheelhouse. Oh favorite shit, word. Man. I feel that. Dude, we are in January now, and that means preseason coming up, training camp, people getting fit, dude. NWSL draft coming. We're going to get new players, presumably. It's exciting. But I got to ask you, last week, did you have a good time at that KC Comets game?
Oh, I had a blast.
We had we had an unofficial no other pod night at KC Comets.
It was I didn't understand some of the things. Like, I thought somebody got an additional person for no reason, like a power up.
Yep.
I saw a red flag. I don't know if it was a
Challenge flag. Is it red or yellow?
I think it was red.
I was watching their away game in St. Louis. I think they threw a yellow, and I was like, what kind of challenge is that? Is that a different challenge?
See, I still don't know, but I had a phenomenal time though. I wish I lived closer, because if I did, I would go to so many more games.
Yeah, we plan to, and it's a little bit of a drive for us, like 35 minutes or so, but kind of worth the drive when tickets are what they are. It's not like they're going to break your bank or anything like that. One thing I took away though, I was just super, we had the roster sheet, and I was super excited to hear this goal scorer's name, and I'm trying to find him on the roster sheet. He is on the roster sheet as the head coach, and he's like in a suit while all the other players on the sheet are in jerseys. And I was like, oh my God, goddamn playing coach. Like I had no idea that was a thing for some reason. So naturally he became my favorite player. So very cool.
Is that the only like coaching staff to simultaneously be a player as well in the MASL?
Oh, I have no idea. I do know I was watching Kevin Ellis play a little bit for St. Louis up there. He scored, that son of a bitch. He scored on us. But I think that, I don't know, man, being a coach and a player, I wonder how that would go over in the morale of the team, right? Like, of course you're starting because you're the coach.
There's got to be questions about playing time and formations and stuff if, he's kind of dictating. Tough. Yeah.
I know when I was the captain of mine and your soccer team, I definitely always made myself start. So when I would pick a lineup or whatever.
You also tried to get a captain's armband in rec soccer.
I did. And then I realized they're not for people with people who actually lift weights. So it was cutting off the circulation to my biceps.
That I didn't see anybody else have a captain's armband, or maybe they did. I don't know.
It's absolutely insane, bro. Nothing. I don't even know how it goes up here. It's absolutely tight. Look at the bicep just bulge out. Look at it.
I feel like this is a premeditated conversation to show off your biceps.
No, I just keep it up here with all my work doilies and Funko Pops. You know how it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you want to kick it over to our draft guy? I think we've BS'd enough. What do you think?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's kick it over.
Let's go.
Let's talk to Chris Henderson. Coming right up. All right. Welcome back, everybody. As promised, we have a very special guest here with us on Currently today. If you're a women's soccer fan of the NWSL in general, perhaps you've seen this person on social media talking about draft classes, mock drafts, and whatnot. Writes for a little site called WoSo Independent, has an NWSL draft class cheat sheet out there. It's at Chris_AWK. Chris Henderson. How are you, man? Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem. It's a busy week, but it's an exciting week as well, just because we're getting so close to the draft, and it seems like every couple of days we get more players entered. So it's busy, but it's also super exciting around this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that the NWSL draft never gets the coverage it deserves, and sometimes like last year they just use all their timeouts, and it takes forever, and it's quite the process. But referring to you, you put together a lot of content and information out there about the sport of women's soccer, and on wosoindependent.com. How long have you been doing this? What got you into doing it? And yeah, what kicked this off for you?
Yeah, so I was the team manager for the University of Georgia women's soccer team in 07 and 08, so that's like an eternity ago. But basically, as I'm guessing a lot of people realized, the coverage of women's college soccer in the media was really bad back then. Even coaches acknowledged it. So, basically after that, I kind of got the idea, well, why don't I try to, improve the coverage a little bit, having been on the inside a little bit. So I started writing for All White Kit, again, an eternity ago. My boss at the time, Jen Appel, just basically let me do anything I want. So that was great. And then I've just kind of bridged off of that, doing pretty much anything I can think of with women's college soccer. I've had a lot of help from people that know stats, and then have hooked me up with advanced stats as well. But it's kind of bridged towards January being the money month where I actually go to the draft live and hopefully, get a chance to cover it live on the floor. But yeah, I mean, basically that's kind of the evolution of it. It's a chaotic kind of month in January preparing. But it's still better than it once was when they just kind of released the names like the day of the draft and you were expected to kind of put everything together.
Right. It's different now, right? There's a little respect on the league these days.
Yeah. It's, I'm happy the draft is back, at the convention. Last year they did it in December, I think maybe a week or two after the college season ended. And it was just a nightmare in terms of, getting all that info out there, but also for the players, whether they're deciding to sign up or not. And it was just not great. And I'm glad they're getting the platform again at the convention because it's a great showcase for the league and the players coming to the league.
Have you noticed an increase in draft coverage over the past few years with more expansion teams and stuff like that?
I mean, I think where the coverage is kind of like with you guys, being more team specific in terms of, covering their specific team and kind of looking at the draft from, a very team centric angle. In terms of, there's just not a lot of good coverage of the college game, if I'm being honest. So I'm not sure how much the coverage has kind of changed there. But I think, more and more fans are devoted towards individual NWSL teams. So I think they're really excited and they're kind of looking at what their teams could do. So I think it's kind of evolved in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about how coverage is mostly team centric right now. So speaking of the Kansas City Current, we got, 3 major additions in Gautreau, DiBernardo, and Mimi Larson. What's your thoughts on, the Kansas City Current's offseason so far?
I mean, you say 3 major additions, but I would count to me, it's almost 5, because if you're getting Sam Mewis and Lynn Williams back from injury, I mean, that's basically 2 huge additions right there. And we don't know, we don't know with the U.S. Women's National Team how much time they would miss, in the season going forward. But if they're healthy and they're productive, I mean, those are 2 additional big additions. But I think, and kind of on Twitter, today I've been looking at, team needs for the draft and kind of where everybody's at, as we kind of get closer to the draft. And Kansas City's in a good position. I think adding DiBernardo and Gautreau, to the midfield is really going to help out. They were pretty strong there already with CC Kaiser and Loa Labonta. But that's a really good central midfield group as compared to a lot of the other teams. I haven't really seen a lot of Mimi Larson, so I don't know what she can kind of provide, but it's pretty obvious she's going to be expected to kind of, be a starter on day one on the front line. I think the one thing, I would say is losing Kristen Edmonds to free agency to Gotham. That might be a little bit of a concern, but compared to some of the other teams that have lost, a lot of big names, I think the Current have done really well in the offseason.
Good point. It's feeling strong. As we're fans who just thought it'd be fun to talk about it via podcast, and we're definitely enjoying all the pickups. I noticed you actually we're recording this on a Wednesday, and you actually tweeted about KC Current, and you do this with a lot of teams, saying what they need and what your expectations are and your predictions and whatnot. You mentioned that they could use a right back, left forward, center back, and a third goalkeeper. So then you mentioned on there as well, Sam Mewis and Lynn Williams. So you say they need a little depth on the wing. So you're thinking Kayla Fisher as our first round pick at pick number 10. What can you tell us about Kayla Fisher?
Yeah, so Kayla Fisher, she's a winger that's played for Ohio State. Pretty consistent, throughout. Usually with wingers and center forwards, at the college level, you have sometimes 2 or 3 good years, 1 kind of down year, just because college players are inconsistent. But she's been pretty consistent throughout. I think, generally speaking, I think she my little measure, the Pegasus measure, which I use via Instat, I think it's a little lower than some of her past numbers, but I think she got a lot more help So even though that number is a little bit lower for her senior season, I think, she played pretty well. Solid conversion rate, creates a lot of chances, really good dribbler. I think the one worry, I would kind of say is her passing completion numbers are a little bit low. At 62%. Usually you're looking at around 70 or higher, for the very, very top tier, at college level. But, in terms of dribbling, scoring, creating chances, she's really solid. I think, I really think there's three kind of big wingers, kind of in this class. Penelope Hawking, who's not going to be available in all likelihood when Kansas City picks. Alexis Spanstra, also probably not going to be available when Kansas City picks. And then Kayla Fisher's kind of that third big name. I'd probably put like a late first round, early second round grade on her. I'll also say, Kansas City does need a right back. I think if Shaylin Hubbard drops to 10, I think she becomes an option there. Just because there's not really a lot of right back depth right now with the names that have been released. But I had Hubbard in my mock draft going, kind of to Louisville at 4. So I'm not really sure if she's going to last to 10. And I think Kansas City, they may try to look defensively, with some of their later picks, but I think Fisher's a really good fit at 10 for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned, defense is a huge need. Kristen Edmonds is gone. We have 8 players, 8 defenders, and I think we have a lot of potential, but just taking a look at starting day one, there's a gap there. Do you think there's any chance that Reina Reyes or Harris could fall to 10?
There is no way Reina Reyes is slipping 10. I don't think she's slipping past 3.
Okay.
I would be really, really shocked if she slips past 3. On my board, there's an argument to be made. She's the best player on the board.
Okay.
I really have kind of the Hawking, Reyes, Madrill, Spanstra. They're all kind of on the same level with me. I think Jalissa Harris, is kind of interesting. I think she could slip to 10 conceivably. I think, center backs are always really weird in the draft process because I usually have center backs, really, really high on my board just because I think they have a lot of value, but teams don't really value center backs, kind of as first round talents unless they're kind of top 3, top 4. So it wouldn't surprise me if Jalissa Harris slips to 10. And then, you basically have a decision to make. Are you going to take Harris at 10 and then hope that at 15, somebody like Kayla Fisher is still on the board? I think, if Harris slips, beyond then, I think Kansas City, they may well still take Fisher at 10, gambling on the fact that Harris slips into the early second round. I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe put a package together at 15 and 18 where their picks trade up, to maybe 12 or 13 to take Harris there. I think in my mock, at 15 or 18, I might have Kansas City taking somebody like Sydney Collins. I think the thing with Collins is that she's really good at keeping possession, great pass accuracy. So I think if Kansas City wants to keep a little more possession, and I think they may be going towards that direction because you're bringing in DiBernardo and Gautreau in the midfield, I think Collins is a really good fit. And if they get her in the second round, I think, it's a pretty good value there as well.
So much good information. I love it, man. Someone's got to do this. Someone's got to talk NWSL Draft, and I love hearing that. Chris, we have Casey Current have 8 draft picks. They also have 22 players on their roster. How many picks is Casey Current taking realistically?
I mean, it kind of depends on if they can find trade partners. I mean, like you said, they have a lot of players on the roster right now and a lot of picks. There's a couple ways you can kind of think about this. You can trade some of those picks. I think next year, there's some solid players next year. So, you might want to perhaps trade for, a second or a third round pick next year as well. Something that, I would think about doing is maybe using some of those later picks on players you can draft and stash, potentially keep their rights while they play in Europe. I think there are some international players, that aren't going to get a lot of, that probably aren't going to get a lot of, consideration, for a roster right away. But, look at a player like perhaps, LSU's got a couple players like Brendan McPartlin or Wasila Sowale, who have potential. I'm not really sure they can stick on a roster right away. But maybe you take them, you basically keep their rights while they play in Europe, for a couple years, and potentially down the line, if they're interested in coming over, you basically bring them over there. It's something I don't see a lot of teams doing in the NWSL right now. It's something that's done a lot in the NBA. But I mean, if you're basically deciding between taking a domestic-based player that probably isn't going to make the opening day roster, or potentially a high ceiling player that can play internationally, I would look towards the international route. I don't think a lot of teams are doing it, but it's something that I would think about doing. And it'll be interesting to see where KC goes, because like I've said, they've got a lot of roster depth, and there's not an immediate need to just stack the team with 8 players that are going to have to contribute right away.
Yeah, and you mentioned trading up or trading down. Is there any like precedence regarding like trade value for picks? Like I know in the NFL, there's like trade charts and stuff like that. Is there anything similar in the NWSL, or is it just kind of dependent on the front office and how they value their picks?
It depends on the front office. I mean, the one thing I gotta say as a disclaimer is that with a lot of my projections, I'm thinking of front office in the NWSL as rational actors, but we've seen, that the front offices of many teams are definitely not rational actors and making, odd picks or odd trades. I think if you're talking about valuation, I think the big thing instead of trading picks, for other picks has been trading like, I don't know the technical term for it, but money. That's used for international players and for big name American players in contracts. That's kind of the bigger thing where teams will pay, $100,000, $200,000 for, a pick. So I personally would rather trade the picks instead of the money. But I think that if we're going to see big trades, for teams moving up or moving down, I think that money is going to come into play more than necessarily picks.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. I feel that, Chris, we have we're in the Kansas area, kind of KU, Mizzou territory. We're both big KU guys. Are there any players who could be selected from KU or Mizzou? Chris had noted that Rylan Childers is on your big board, listed at 15. What can you tell us about Childers as a player?
Yeah, she's a really interesting player because she kind of started her career at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. Kind of a low-level D1 team, was outstanding there, ended up transferring to Kansas. And, usually it can kind of go one of two ways. The player moving up, to a Power 5 team from a lower team, just kind of, they see their stats kind of diminish a little bit. But then, with her, it's basically the opposite. She really flourished. Her conversion rate, in terms of scoring, was out of this world as compared to a lot of the other center mids in this class. I think she's, tied for second in terms of pass completion, so 78%. Which, if you're familiar with the college game, Claire Robbins, exact same pass completion percentage. So, very good comparably. And I think the one thing, that really lets her shine is she's pretty good defensively as well. Over 50% in all of the major categories, defensively, which is definitely not assured, if you're talking about center mids at collegiate level. So, it's funny you mentioned her because she was actually one of the names I was looking at for, either the 15th or the 18th pick, for Kansas City. So I think it makes a lot of sense there. I don't know if she's going to slip that far because I think she grades out really well. And I think she's a player that could end up going at some point in the second round. But I think, it's an easy pick. if she's available for Kansas City at some point in the second round.
I am pretty fortunate in the fact that I live in Lawrence, so I go to all the KU games that I'm in town. And when I watch her, she is, she's different. Like when you watch her play for KU, she's just one of the better players on the team for KU. She's smoother, like you mentioned, her completion percentage, and it really shows when you watch her on a game in and game out basis. And she has a sister that plays on KU as well. And, I think if she could stay in Kansas, I think that'd be a really cool story. So I'm hoping that the current, don't let her sit around for too long. But taking a look at, this year to previous year's draft, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of this year compared to last year, just for context?
Yeah, I think last year, it's kind of a really gifted class where you had, a handful of players like Gurma and DeMello that were able to come in like right away and be really, really good. I don't think this class kind of compares in that respect. I don't think you're going to have, anybody from this class coming in and, being first team all NWSL right away. That's not to say there's not talent in this class. I think, every class has talent if you know where to look. It's just that in this class, positionally, there are some positions that are a lot stronger than others. I think this is a really good class for center backs. In addition to Emily Madrill and Sydney Collins, you've got, Jalissa Harris, which we talked about a little bit earlier, but you've also got players like Talani Barnett, who I think would be great value in the middle rounds. So I think, center back's really good. I think, center mid, attacking mid is pretty good as well. There's some good center, forward, and winger prospects, but some other positions are pretty weak. Right back, I've kind of gone on about this a lot. It's really Shaylin Hubbard at this point and almost nobody else. It's not to say there aren't going to be prospects at right back that declare for the draft or on kind of on the list that we kind of look at later, but right now, Shaylin Hubbard is really the only right back on the list that I have a draftable grade on. Left back's a little bit better. You've got Ruby Diodati and Cecily Stout, who are pretty solid. But there's not a ton of depth there either. And then kind of defensive center mid, it's kind of a blur. There are some decent prospects who I think could do a job in the later rounds, but there's no one overwhelming player. And then finally, goalkeeper. I don't think anybody in this class is going to be a starter in the NWSL. I think the two names to look at right now probably are Lauren Kozel and Ashley Orcus, who I think, plus level backups. They can make a roster and have a nice career, but, I don't think, their ceiling kind of grades out with kind of the top level prospects. And if we've seen, for example, with the Thorns, you don't have to take a goalkeeper like in the second or third round, to have somebody that's a reliable starter day in and day out. So, I don't think there's going to be a goalkeeper taken probably until, rounds 3 or 4, and probably not too many overall.
Well, you answered our goalkeeper question because, we don't have a third stringer. So we're, do teams need a third stringer? I guess I should ask that. Is that something you think we're looking for on draft day?
Well, definitely, if you kind of take into account 80 France potentially making, the Women's World Cup team for the U.S., you definitely need a third stringer there. And I think the thing with Kansas City, I would usually say, if you don't have that super glaring need where you absolutely need a starter, or you absolutely need a second stringer, basically wait until the draft's over and get a developmental prospect, because you can get an undrafted free agent that can serve a third goalkeeper role pretty well. The thing with Kansas City, though, is they got a lot of picks. I wouldn't be shocked if they used a third or fourth rounder, on a third goalkeeper, just because they have so many picks. They can actually afford, to do that. Who is it going to be? I don't really know. I don't really see anybody from kind of, the Kansas area necessarily, in terms of hometowns, looking at it. So, if Orcus or Kozel are still available, in rounds 3 or 4, Megan McClelland out of Rutgers is another name, that I think might, get attention in the later rounds. But it's really kind of, up to the preference of the team goalkeeping coaches, whoever they kind of put a good grade on.
For sure. I forget that AD France could absolutely be sliding into that national team. That's exciting to think about. Chris, are you a primary fan of any NWSL team yourself?
No. So I grew up mostly in Atlanta, so I was like a fan of the Beats, and WSA was like way before my time, but I was a fan of the team that called themselves the Beat in WPS, which had very, very little in common with the really good team, the WSA. But I'm not really close to any. Well, I guess I'm close to the Red Stars, where I guess they're like 2 hours away from where I'm at. I'm in Indiana, but I don't really have any kind of loyalty at this point towards a specific NWSL team.
Well, if you need one, man, Casey Kern are doing big things. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll take you in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be hopping on that bandwagon over the next few years because, like you said, they're definitely making a lot of big moves right now.
Yeah, totally. Chris, you have anything else for Henderson?
Oh, absolutely. So is there a player when you're doing all your prep and and everything? Is there a player that you feel like is really raw, but in the right system, under the right structure, they could, a team can harness that ability?
Good question. Probably a couple. So, one of the players I really like, is at LSU from Ghana, Wasila Dewar-Sowale. I think I mentioned earlier about players you could potentially stash overseas. She started her career with Lamar, out of Texas from the Southland Conference, ended up going to LSU and, was really, really good as a senior. Not very flashy passer. I don't think she had a key pass the entire season, but, she was tied for the highest or close to the highest, overall pass completion, was highest in dribbles, very solid defensively. But she doesn't have like 4 years of Power 5 experience like a lot of the other players. So the problem is, she consumes an international slot. I wish the league would do something about that in terms of, making it a little more flexible, maybe having like a flex slot for somebody that's in NCAA soccer for like 3 or 4 years. But she's someone that I think, has a lot of skill that could be developed. Whether it comes in the NWSL or not is kind of up for debate. I think Messiah Bright, is another player that I think is going to go in the middle rounds, maybe even go into like the late first round. Not really kind of a metrics darling. The metrics don't really like her, or they've liked her for 2 seasons. They don't like her for 2 other seasons. I think in the right system with the right coaching, if they get her to play consistently, she can be one of the best players kind of at center forward in this draft. And then one of the players I really like is Carly Giamona out of Pepperdine. I think I had her going like late in the first round in North Carolina. Just a really good player in terms of chance creation. I think she had the top amount of chance creation, and it wasn't even close, for a center mid. Really good playmaker. And I think, somebody, if she can defend at the next level, which is kind of the big question, I think she's somebody that has a really high ceiling, and that given the right weapons, which North Carolina has some, like Carolyn, Deanna Ordonez, I think, she could be somebody that really pops, from this draft class.
There's a lot of great information there. You mentioned players you like. Do you have a favorite player through this whole process that you really like a pet cat kind of a thing? That's a term for a player that might not have gotten the attention it deserves or they deserve. So sorry, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer usually is whoever basically praises me on Twitter, because I do get a lot of parents basically saying they love me on Twitter and the coverage I provide. But I've got a soft spot for Nicole Douglas, at Arizona State, who's kind of on top of my board. for center forwards. I think, if she stays in the NWSL, I think it's a huge coup. Just because if you look at a player if you look at, some of the past English players that have gone on and played in the NWSL, like Rachel Daly, Leah Galton, who is doing big things with Manchester United. I think, Douglas can be that type of talent. So I think keeping her in the NWSL would be a huge kind of coup. And then, being a Georgia alum, I got to say Abby Boyan and Cecily Stout. Hope big things are ahead for them, because I think they should both be drafted, based on talent, but I think they could both stick in the league for a while, because they both have a fair amount of talent.
Yeah, so some players keep an eye on there. There's a trend of college players going directly overseas. Fischel did it last year. This year, and I know I'm going to butcher this name. Marika Reyes joined Tigres, straight out of UCLA. Do you see that being a trend that that will continue?
I think it will continue. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a mass exodus where every single, American top level talent goes overseas. But I mean, it's the reality. Every player has, different goals. For some players, staying in America and playing in the domestic league, is great. But others, they want to play in the Champions League. They want to play for a Chelsea or Manchester United or Juventus. They want to basically, go to Europe. I think somebody was kind of talking today in my replies, basically saying that Jade Revere, was rumored for Manchester United, and Jade Revere, if she was in this NWSL draft class, would probably be, a top 3 pick. So it's really something the NWSL is going to have to compete with. I don't think it's a doom and gloom kind of thing that some people think, where, we're going to see, like MLS, where, where you see in the super draft, basically, rotation level talent or below. I still think there's going to be a lot of great talent coming through the draft. I think the next 2 years draft are going to be very, very good for top level talent. But, you can't deny that there are going to be players every year that just go straight to Europe or go straight to Mexico and bypass the draft.
Yeah. And last question for you, and then we'll stop stealing your time. Pick 10. What player would fall that would cause the current fan base to just be ecstatic, like that we did not expect to be there? Can you see anybody falling?
Let's see. Alexa Spanstra, maybe. I don't necessarily think she's going to fall that far. But, if you're talking about players that are exciting, that could drop that far, I think she could be it. Maybe. I think maybe Clara Robbins. I think Chicago, if Clara Robbins is on the board at 7 and Chicago doesn't take her, they're crazy. But at the same time, there may be some people worrying about Robbins' age. I think she's been around since like 2017, just because she's had knee injuries and the extra year for COVID. That might scare some teams off. I think if she falls that far, I think if Spanstra falls that far, I don't think they are. But if they do, and they're at 10, I think Kansas City is going to be doing backflips, because that's basically mid-round talent falling to the end of round 1. And the thing with Kansas City is there's not going to be any immediate pressure for them to come in and basically, start right away. They can basically be eased into things because Kansas City has such a loaded roster. And I think a lot of people really discount fit in terms of, who is successful and who is not successful. But if history has told us anything, fit really matters when you get past that very, very top level of talent. The wrong fit can really, really hurt a player's career, but the right fit, basically can reap a lot of dividends for these players that go into situations that really benefit them right away.
Chris Henderson, you have been more than knowledgeable and gracious with your time, man. We really appreciate it. Where can people follow you? Is it just the Twitter, or are you super cool on Instagram, or where are you at?
I'm not on the gram. Basically Twitter is just about it. These days, it is CHRIS_AWK. In my profile, I have links to the spreadsheet, which I'm updating, kind of as the NWSL releases more names. And I don't know if I think I've got I may link to like a Medium where I usually post my college stuff on the Medium in terms of like mock brackets and stuff, but I'm gonna post my mock draft just because it's easier on there as well. So check those out. Usually everything that gets updated is on the Twitter, like first and foremost. Also, I will say, if you appreciate this, I've got a Venmo link there as well. I'll probably plug that, after I get done. But it helps. It's not easy traveling, for the coaches conference and dealing with everything else. But if you're interested, chip in, pay tribute. Otherwise, thank you for giving me a platform, just because, like you said, draft coverage, needs to be better. And thankfully you guys are taking it seriously and, letting me kind of do my spiel.
No, for sure. Like I said, we really appreciate it. I learned things today, so I'm definitely sure people listening learned things today or watching. And guys, go check them out at Chris_AWK. So Chris Henderson, thank you so much, man. We'll let you go and hopefully catch up with you another time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Well, there it is, my guy. Dude, thanks so much for setting that up. He is a whirlwind of knowledge about this stuff. I'm ashamed that I don't know things, but I've learned today. And I've learned that I'm kind of excited for the NWSL draft, which a year ago I probably wouldn't have given two craps about.
That man has so much knowledge. The second he just started going through players and characteristics and aspects and everything, my mind was blown and I couldn't even focus. Yeah. It was hard. He was coming up with, he was dropping so much knowledge on us that I couldn't even focus on the task at hand.
Well, these players, incredible. He would just name drop. He would name drop and I'd be like, well, hold on, I'm Googling, hold on. I couldn't figure out who he was talking about. And then we asked about Rylan Childers. I was like, oh, no, it's from KU, right? Let me Google her real quick. Oh, he's already talking shit. It's rough, man. But you came up with some really good questions there to throw at him. And I'm just so happy he was gracious enough with his time because he sounds super busy.
Last night he was putting his big board together. I know because I was following his Twitter.
What's that mean? Twitter, Tell me what big board means.
It's a list of your top players ranked in order of, the quality and what he believes they are. So He put together his big board. He also, it's a downloadable spreadsheet or, accessible spreadsheet. And he has it broken down by position groups. I have been following him for a few years now. And I honestly cannot think of a better follow for NWSL draft coverage. And he also, it's not just draft coverage too. He does, team breakdowns. He talks a lot about the free agent. So if you want a one-stop shop for all that stuff, he is a great follow. And if you're so inclined, chip in a few bucks if you really enjoyed it and you thought, you thought that information was really valuable.
I loved everything he brought, man. You have to be knowledgeable to talk about this corner of the sports world, women's soccer draft, and then take it a step further, college women's soccer. Dude, people don't know names from that, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate we don't, because it's not this overhyped college sport like football or basketball, right? Or even baseball at times, looking out prospects to the majors and whatnot. But he knows them. He knows the people, and we should pay attention, man. It'd be exciting to hear who we draft, and if it's someone he mentioned, and how right he was when we take such and such goalkeeper or something. It's exciting and gets me a little excited to pay attention to the draft. And we'll probably talk about the draft a little more next week because it's a week away.
Yeah. And, when we put this podcast together, we're just talking about, no other pod and having a currently version of it. We talked about one of the things we want to do is treat women's soccer just like we would treat men's or any other male sport.
Well,
and one
Chris, hold on. If that's the case, then I shouldn't give two shits about the draft. I'm just saying.
You might be the only person who does not pay attention to
MLS draft, though. No one pays attention to that.
Nobody pays attention to that.
Yeah.
But
NFL draft, I'll pay attention when it's in Kansas City because I want to be cool like everyone else, paying attention.
Tucker's probably shaking his head back there, but
whatever. I'll be the biggest fan.
But we wanted to bring attention to the women's draft, and that was one of our goals from day one. Danielle from the Blue Crew, when we had our interview with her, she said just treat them the same, and that's with reaching out to Chris and giving he gave us his time very graciously. That was our aim, is to provide draft coverage to these women who people might not even know their name. Some of these players might not even be drafted, but they should, or they deserve to have their, people talk about them as a player. And I'm really excited. I learned so much by that. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it again, maybe a few times to catch all the names. There's just so much
like listening to yourself.
No, I'm gonna fast forward past myself.
I'm gonna scrub through it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I feel that so much good info, and been doing it a long time too. Really tried to get some personal shit out of him to see who he follows and supports. And he's true independent there. True,
he's a machine. He doesn't have time to support. He's a machine.
That's weird to me because I feel like if someone called me up and was like, "Hey, really love your podcast. You're doing great work. Do you want to come? You want to come big time? You want to come do a league-wide podcast?" It'd be tough to stay like neutral. You know what I mean? Because my fandoms,
you couldn't do it.
I have
Look
a
at your
favorite team.
arm. Look at your arm,
buddy. I got a favorite team in every single league, my friend. From Serie A to Liga 1 to La Liga, Liga MX. I got a jersey for all these teams. I love them. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people stay neutral in that business. So, but luckily we're on KC Sports Network, man, and we're allowed to, talk about our fandom along with all the other great shows and stuff.
What I liked is he talked about some of the strengths in the draft, and that was center back and and forward, and those are two things that we could use some depth on. So it kind of it really seems like we're in a good position that fate has just aligned up to where the positions we need, there's more depth at. So I'm excited, man. I'm really excited. When we record this podcast next week, we may not even have some of those picks. We may trade them for a veteran player, or package them and move up or move down. I don't know.
Yeah, package some picks, or because we're not going to get rid of any players for any picks or anything like that. That just doesn't sound logical at all, right? I know some people do that, right? They trade players for picks.
Oh yeah,
unnecessary. Doesn't seem necessary at all. Okay, buddy. Well, should we wrap this up? You done?
I'm done. I got to go re-listen to it. I'm excited.
Okay. Well, shoot, guys, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Chris Henderson. We'll be back next week. You can follow us online, Twitter, Instagram at NoOtherPod, at Dan Kooser, at Chris Wright 21. Send us an email, nootherpod@gmail.com. We're always getting to people's questions and whatnot. I had a buddy text me today and was like, "Hey, heard my name uncurrently last week." And I'm like, "Well, keep those questions coming in then, brother. We'll get to you every time." So anyways, thank you so much. This doesn't happen without you listening, and more fun interviews to come as this off season comes to a close in the next couple months, and excited soccer on the horizon. So for Chris, I'm Dan. We will talk to you later. We love you.